The captain of the USS Theodore Roosevelt reported the first case of coronavirus last week. The nuclear-powered aircraft carrier has since docked at a port in Guam, a US territory in the Western Pacific. The Pentagon says most of the 5,000 sailors must stay on the ship. Its captain says it does not have enough quarantine and isolation facilities. In a letter to Navy commanders, Captain Brett Crozier wrote, "We are not at war. Sailors do not need to die. If we do not act now, we are failing to properly take care of our most trusted asset, our sailors." The US Navy says it's testing everybody on board, and the situation is under control.
Sailors who have been flown off the ship are currently doing fine. None of them have been required to be hospitalized because their symptoms are very mild. They're aches and pains and those types of things, sore throats, but nothing that required hospitalization. So they're in quarantine now on Guam.
US Defense Secretary Mark Esper says now is not the time to evacuate the ship.
I don't think we're at that point, Nora. We were moving a lot of supplies and medical assistance out to the carrier in Guam. We were providing additional medical personnel as they need it. I'm pleased to report that none of them are seriously ill.
The US Navy says it'll take sailors off the aircraft carrier on a rotating basis. It's a plan that seems to fall short of the decisive action called for by the ship's captain. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
Our correspondent Shihab Ratanzi joins us now from Washington, D.C. Shihab, let's start with this aircraft carrier. I mean, there are thousands of people on board, all living in incredibly close quarters, touching all of the same things, and the Pentagon seems to want them to stay there?
You know, as is so often the case with the administration's response to the coronavirus, we're getting mixed messages. So we had Esper there, the Defense Secretary, seeming to be quite blasé about it, in fact, dismissing it almost. And then we also have the acting Navy Secretary who gave a series of interviews yesterday at US time here, who said that there is a plan underway. He said the key is to make sure that we can get a set of crew members that can man all the critical functions on the ship, make sure they're clean, get them back on while we clean the ship and get the other crew members off. And so he said there is a methodical process that's underway to try and get these men off the ship, and in fact said that 1,000 men had already been taken off. But that then the acting chief of the Pacific Fleet declined to actually confirm those numbers, that 1,000 had been taken off. So it's the usual thing that we have a certain amount of confusion here. What is the message being sent out? Esper's, which is like, no, we're not really there. The acting Navy Secretary is saying, no, we have a plan underway. This is going to happen. And in fact, 1,000 men have already come off. Is that true? It's just simply not clear. It's yet another case where we're just not getting a straight answer from the administration as to what is planned and what is actually happening.
Well, one thing that we've finally been getting a straight answer from the administration on is these figures of potential deaths. Now, this number is incredibly high, nearly 250,000, and that's with people following restrictions. So how does the lack of equipment then, particularly ventilators, play into this?
A series of projections were released by the White House on Tuesday, which even seemed to have sobered up Donald Trump, who's no longer talking about opening up the country as quickly as possible by Easter, perhaps. I mean, it was a very different Donald Trump that we saw on Tuesday. But as you said, yes, between 100 and 240,000 people dead. Although it's not clear what the time frame was for that, by the way. That was a question that wasn't asked at the press briefing. You know, what sort of time frame are we talking about for this? That's, again, as you said, with social distancing, a couple of million without social distancing in one of the projections. And as you said, equipment is the other key issue for the day, I think, right now. We have this mixed messaging. We have the local officials, the state officials, the governors and so on saying, look, we're having to bid against each other to get vital equipment that we need to help our people. It's, I think Cuomo, the New York governor, compared it to eBay. And yet Donald Trump at the briefing on Tuesday said, well, that shouldn't be happening. They're just driving up the prices. They should call us if they have any problems. But actually, it's actually us, it's the federal government who these governors are also bidding against. So again, confusion as to what is happening here. Is there some joined up thinking system, mechanism to get everyone the equipment that they need? So that's the main issue I think that's coming up today. The other is whether the CDC and the official guidance will be for everyone to wear masks now. In the past, there was a great deal of reluctance to do that because there was a fear that people would misconstrue that they would then start ordering the medical mask that should be going to frontline workers. The advice here would be just make your own mask out of cloth, out of scarves and things like that, so you stop infecting other people. So there's this big debate as to whether this should now be the policy in the US, or whether it will just make people either get the wrong impression and start buying the crucial medical equipment, or will lead to inhibition. It'll make people think, well, look, I'm safe now. I've got my scarf around my mouth, so I can do whatever I want. So these are the debates going on in the US right now.
Well, clearly a lot more clarity still required. Shihab Rattanzi there for us in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Shihab.